Good afternoon, good Friday to you, ladies and gentlemen. It's April 18th, 2025. I'm Dave Neal, and I have all your stories for your rush hour ride home. Now, maybe you're not even working today. You're just taking a stroll, walking with your dog, ignoring your partner, or ignoring your kids. Who the hell knows? Enjoy your life, right? Here's what I got for you. Subpoena-gate is solved. I'll be discussing the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni case as Brian Friedman, Justin Baldoni's attorney, has spoken out. Blake Lively's lawyer has spoken out, admitting that this is all legit. And then we're also going to have the answer to the question, is this lawyer really effed? It might be a long Easter weekend for them, but we'll have to see if they can resurrect their career. You like what I did there? A little resurrection joke. Okay, so then we'll get into Bill Burr, how he explains a lot of what's going on in our economy. Bill Burr's one of the best to do it. He speaks from a blue-collar voice, but he's got very smart, he's got a smart brain, but a blue-collar voice, so we'll listen to what he has to say. And now Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, apparently the U.S. government is saying, well, I guess we couldn't fix things. Come on, I thought we were going to stop the war before day one. What's happening? I guess, international politics is a little harder than they made it seem in a couple tweets. All right, we got all these stories and more starting right now on The Rush. Well, I want to, try to offer more gratitude when it comes to how appreciative I am of all of the people that have rallied around to support me. I got this review. I found Dave through Zach Peter. I was feeling overwhelmed by the news and wanted to distract myself with the Blake and Justin story. I really love that Dave covers pop culture as well as some important political news, and he delivers it in such a great way that doesn't give me anxiety. I start every morning listening to his podcast. Thank you, Dave. You do such a great job. Thank you for being funny and always factual. And then someone else said, thank you for giving us all the news. Some might have their ears hearing this news for the first time. As a retail shop owner, I'm surprised how many do not understand what is happening in our country. That's what it comes down to. And again, we obviously got review bombed last month. We got some bad reviews, but all the new people that have come in on Apple Podcasts and offered us great reviews, I appreciate it. I mean, I could care less on the what they want to rate us. It's all about do we have an audience of people that get what's going on? And I think that's what we're getting here, is an audience that understands we can do multiple things. We can cover the dumb, silly news stories, and then we can keep you abreast of all of the big issues. Well, this is actually a big issue, this mockery that people are making of the Blue Origin spaceship. Now, not so much to say it's not to be anti Katy Perry or anything like that. It's just to show how ridiculous it is that we've got Amazon owner, CEO Jeff Bezos shooting people into space. Have a listen. So it says, new Amazon ad celebrates Katy Perry spaceflight. And obviously these ads were made up. Somebody put them in front of an Amazon fresh store. And it says, our tax avoidance is out of this world. Just ask Katy Perry. And again, poor Katy Perry, right? She just took a flight to space for 11 minutes, thought she was going to come back and be referred to as Astronaut Perry, and just not the case. But it's not about her. This idea of tax avoidance, these companies that are ultra wealthy, they know how to skirt around paying their fair share. So when you look at that, the Fortune 100 companies, their effective tax rates are less than 10%. So you and I, right, you make $100,000, you pay 35% federal tax or whatever it is. You pay around 30 to 35% in taxes, right? But here we have Amazon paying 6% in tax. And now again, this was from 2021, but the numbers, these are pretty static here. ExxonMobil, 2.8% taxes after making $9.3 billion. Microsoft, under 10%. JP Morgan, 6%. With $48 billion made. So they're making $48 billion. Now that's revenue, not profit. But the point is, it's how come these companies can get tax write-offs for all of the things that they do, and they can donate to lobbyists and get money into politics and all of that, but they can't pay their fair share? And the argument against that is, well, if they pay 30% in tax, they're just going to pass the charges on to the consumer. And to be honest, I say fine. If Amazon pays their fair share in taxes, and it means the cost of the doodads that you buy at Amazon goes up, maybe you'll just start buying from the local community again, right? It's the same scenario It's the butterfly effect. We always talk about, do you remember that story where they reintroduced wolves into the national park, and the wolves ate the deer, so then the deer weren't around to kill all the grass, and it brought back the wildlife and the birds. The next thing you know, the ecosystem's back together. Well, that's how I feel if you tax these companies that have made so much money that they can shoot dick-shaped rockets into the sky, and Katy Perry can sing Firework as Gayle King says, I'm an astronaut, how about you? If they have that much money to do that, I think they can be taxed to a higher level that will then provide, a better livelihood for the middle class. That's just what I think. Anyway, speaking of Gayle King, here she is with another response. These responses are all over the internet of someone responding to her. I've been to space. How about you? Have a listen.
My question is, have y'all been to space? Have you been to space?
Have I been to space? No. Have you spent a year donating your blood plasma twice a week to buy pet food because 25% of your $12 an hour job was being garnished for hospital bills? Have you ever done that? You should try it.
So again, it's just this idea. Have you all been to space? No, we're all participating in late stage capitalism where we can't afford our first homes and the cost of groceries is going up. And it's like, no, we can't go to space. Gayle, come on. What we can do is talk about Blake Lively. So I'm going to just throw the Blake Lively stuff up right here. It's a tight needle to thread on the podcast. I've got people saying, Dave, no more Blake Lively. And then I've got people that are saying, well, no more politics. Well, you're going to get all of it. So take it as a buffet. Eat what you want. But it's like, to be quite honest, the Blake Lively story has fed the family for a few months now, right? It's really grown the channel. It's helped me be able to afford a social media manager and all these other things. And the Blake Lively story is like the fireplace in the center of the cabin, and someone's complaining, I don't like the smell of fire. And it's like, it's keeping you warm, Brittany, right? So we can't go to space, but we can talk about Blake Lively. So we covered this last night, or this morning, I should say. The Sham subpoena has been confirmed. They're calling this a potential massive win for Justin Baldoni. I'm going to share what Justin Baldoni's lawyer had to say. And just to catch you guys up, there was a subpoena that was created in a lawsuit that is now being unearthed, that this lawsuit was started by Blake Lively in this defunct company they don't even use. The only time they've used this company was to buy furniture from Europe a couple years ago. It's a fake company. It doesn't exist. But they used this company to create a lawsuit against 10 John Does, which means they were trying to sue people they didn't know who they were suing. And in that lawsuit, as soon as they got a subpoena for Stephanie Jones, they got all the information they needed to get legally, extract it from Jennifer Abel's cell phone, which was a way to skirt around a confidentiality agreement. And then they just dropped the case the next day. Therefore, you couldn't find it. Luckily, Without a Crystal Ball on YouTube cracked the case open. Daily Mail is taking credit for it, but you guys know where we stand. We're giving credit to Without a Crystal Ball. Legal experts say the case appeared to be a sham lawsuit, with one describing it as super shady. Justin Baldoni's attorney, Brian Friedman, and apparently he just found out about this, told Daily Mail this appears to be an end around, skirting the process to be able to secretly get these documents without having to give anyone notice. That would be an abuse of process, and we intend to take all action allowable under the law. Now, hold on a second. Blake Lively's side, they're not going down without a fight. I'll share what they had to say next. Okay, before I get into Blake Lively's attorney, Brian Friedman also had to say he had no knowledge about the lawsuit, and Lively's lawyers said the newly uncovered lawsuit was common and entirely appropriate. They accused Brian Friedman of faux outrage. Well, we'll have to see what the judge has to say about this. Court papers show the shadow lawsuit was filed in Manhattan Supreme Court on September 27th by a company called Van Zandt. The lawsuit accused up to 10 unidentified individuals, listed as Does 1 through 10, of harming Van Zandt's business and reputation, but did not specify what they did wrong. Now, I guess the way that you could make this credible is if Blake Lively's able to prove that Van Zandt is the sort of umbrella, corporation that her brand is under. I don't think that's the case. They have participated and may continue to participate in efforts to harm plaintiff, including by failing to act in plaintiff's best interest, taking action to their personal benefit at plaintiff's expense, failing to freely communicate with plaintiff regarding matters that impact plaintiff's business and reputation, and disclosing to third parties and failing to keep strictly confidential plaintiff's confidential and or private information, reads one of the typically vague sentences. So yeah, I guess their argument's going to be, well, they had to file this to be super vague because she's a celebrity and they were trying to keep this on the DL. But I think everyone's calling BS on that. After quietly issuing the subpoena, Katz, who, by the way, that's the attorney for Blake Lively here, then asked for the Van Zandt suit to be withdrawn without any further action on December 19th. So they get the subpoena. They say, all right, never mind. We're going to withdraw our lawsuit. The following day, Lively formally filed her California Civil Rights Department complaint accusing Baldoni of harassment and retaliation. So she used this Van Zandt sham subpoena to get the information that she wanted to then publicly have when she was accusing him of all these things. Records show that Van Zandt was founded in 2010 in Delaware, a state notorious for its corporate secrecy. Public records there give no clue to its owner. However, the firm later did business in California, requiring it to file in that state too, revealing Lively is behind the company. So if they didn't file in California, no one would have known who's behind Van Zandt. A September 2023 California corporate filing lists Blake Reynolds, Lively's married name, as the company's CEO, secretary, and chief financial officer, and states the firm is in the entertainment industry. Lively's attorney, okay, here's what Blake Lively's attorney had to say. Ezra Hudson said, Doe lawsuits are common and entirely appropriate legal tools for pursuing claims and uncovering the identity of unknown perpetrators of unlawful activities. This lawsuit unearthed the Wayfair party's documented plan, in their own words, in their own text messages, to destroy Blake Lively. Their faux outrage has nothing to do with legal ethics or the law, which are not an issue here, and is entirely about the fact that they got caught doing something that they insisted would be untraceable. Hudson was backed by Los Angeles-based attorney Lincoln Brandlow, who said it is not unusual to file a lawsuit against an unnamed defendant, and the plaintiff doesn't know their names yet. For example, in defamation cases against anonymous social media users. Brandlow said Lively may have just used Van Zandt to avoid attracting media attention. If they were trying to stay a little bit under the radar with this, it's not surprising. Yeah, okay, sure. Well, how come they only, this is like spearfishing blindly. Like they only used a subpoena towards Stephanie Jones, when in fact they say, well, we didn't know who we were going against. Really? You didn't? Then how come the next day you get all that information and then you sue Justin Baldoni? I don't know. It's wild to me. It may not be the dagger that, gets, maybe the lawyer doesn't get disbarred over this. Who knows? But it's pretty wild. The paper reported that the text included in Lively's filing had been obtained by a subpoena, a curious detail that raised eyebrows at the time. Friedman pointed out that he wasn't aware of a subpoena and that none of his clients had been subpoenaed in the matter at that stage. He also noted that a subpoena can't be issued without a case number tied to a formally filed legal complaint, which to his knowledge didn't appear to exist at that point. But Daily Mail's investigation has since revealed that the dramatic legal war had quietly been in the works 3 months before Lively publicly sued Baldoni. So there it is. And 4 days after the filing, on October 1st, Katz, who's the attorney, issued a subpoena to Baldoni's ex-publicist Stephanie Jones and her company JonesWorks, who had recently parted ways with the actor, demanding all documents and communications related to Lively, her husband Ryan Reynolds, their companies, and Baldoni. So there she is, attorney Samantha Katz. She must be shitting in her boots today because, look, they're saying what she did wasn't illegal per se, but that it's highly unethical. And again, maybe it's not, maybe it's just dirty, but either way, it's like this only works if people don't know you're doing it. But how, when this whole case, hundreds of millions of dollars, is based on these text messages, how did they think they could just get a subpoena and then people wouldn't wonder where it came from? Mommy sleuths out here had other plans. Let's go to this attorney here. I'm trying to find the actual name of this attorney. I want to make sure I credit them. But we have legal implications and consequences of filing a frivolous lawsuit used to cure sharing of confidential information. So that's the idea, right? This idea that, was this a frivolous lawsuit? And if so, what will a judge have to say about that?
Here, because it's essentially almost a fraud on the court, right? It's a fraud on the court in the sense that this isn't a real lawsuit because you didn't have any contractual relationship with Stephanie Jones. And you're saying it's a New York entity, it's clearly Stephanie Jones. You provided no factual allegations. You did this for the purpose of getting the subpoena and to give Stephanie Jones cover. And I have to say, things are filed and withdrawn all the time in state court, especially if the court doesn't have to waste any resources on actually hearing them, having conferences, dealing with it. I'm sure it happens every day. It's kind of a non-issue. It's maybe annoying and it's not favored, but I'm sure it's seen as generally a non-issue. But that's usually in cases where somebody decides to do something and then decides better of it, or some development happens and then they go back on it. This is very different.
Yes.
If we're correct on this, and I do believe at this point we're correct on this, there could always be more, but this is fitting. Finally, the pieces are fitting. So when I say it wouldn't have been a big deal for a case to be filed and then withdrawn, I stand by that. But to do that for the purpose of getting a subpoena when there was no validity to the underlying action, in order to get a subpoena, in order to allow Stephanie Jones to avoid her contractual obligations to Wayfarer.
Yeah, so she goes, pfft. Very interesting stuff. I got to find out the name of this attorney because I'd love to give people credit, but I don't see it here. And I want to make sure that, I'd love to start interviewing some of these lawyers that are covering the case. So please find out who that is and send them a DM. And again, their name's not here. So yeah, we want to credit all of our content creators. All right, well, we're going to take a shift from there, but talk about something really interesting. Look, I love Bill Burr. I think he's a fantastic comedian. I think he's one of those comics that speaks truth to power, so much so that a lot of MAGA think that he's being paid to share these opinions that he's sharing. But what he's essentially sharing is the opinion that we've got robber barons, people that are coming in, these rich billionaires, these oligarchs, and they're kind of taking from the middle class. And we know that's the case because this happened in the Gilded Age, right? The Gilded Age was the late 1800s, and it's when we had several billionaires. We had J.P. Morgan, we had Rockefeller, we had all of these tycoons that made a ton of money, and everybody else, a lot of people were very low or low to middle class, barely getting by. And it was the time that had the greatest wealth inequality. And that means the rich were rich and the poor were poor. It is the greatest wealth inequality until now. Now we have that same issue where the ultra rich are so rich to the point, so fantastically rich that we can't even comprehend it, right? So as I was talking about this, excuse me, fight oligarchy idea, we had somebody say, but Dave, AOC was riding in first class in a plane. And I'm like, if you can't understand the difference between a $5,000 first class seat and somebody who makes $5,000 a minute, these billionaires, if you can't understand the difference of that, I don't know what to tell people because yes, a first class seat, like I can't afford that. That's really nice, but it ain't to the level of the things we are fighting. Here's what Bill Burr had to say about the idea that our country's poor and we've given away all these jobs to other people. He does a good job of explaining it. Have a listen.
I remember that's not the case. Here's a little quick history from someone who doesn't read a lot. In the 1800s, during the, what was that period called?
Gilded
The
Era.
Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, that too.
They had like kids working in factories, like fucking 12, 14-hour days, like 4 or 5-year-old kids in dangerous situations. And people weren't making any money. And the one guy who owned the factory was keeping all the money. The working man finally has enough. They start organizing unions. The robber barons hire police, the army, all of these people to come in and kill these people in riots, crack their skulls, do unbelievable sorts of damage to them to try and force them to go back to work for sweatshop wages. These people died, were maimed, catastrophic fucking injuries so that we could have a decent wage in this country. And they had unions and all of that. So then there was like a 40, 50-year period where being a middle-class person, middle-class white person, was the dream. It was eventually these corporations just got sick of dealing with these unions and their hard-nosed negotiating and all that. And then they just said, well, fuck you then. Keep your union, keep your factory. We're leaving. And they took their factories outside of the U.S. and went back to 1800 wages. What the fuck? You should be making those things here. And then what the corporate guy said was, well, we would make sneakers here, but if to pay the American worker and everything, the sneakers would then, instead of costing $50, they'd now cost $700. And I was always thinking, why? It would cost $700. I can't afford that. And what it really was they weren't going to lose the profit of sweatshop labor. So if they came back to America, we weren't going to work for that. So, and they weren't going to lose the profit of sweatshop labor, so they were going to pass it on to the consumer.
Easy to see why Bill Burr is popular, Crystal.
All right, so there it is. And again, just so you guys know, this is I shared this from Breaking Points, which is a great YouTube channel because they've got a Republican and they've got a Democrat or a progressive having these conversations. They're able to meet and talk about these popular conversations that just about everyone can agree on. I think most people can agree that the rich are getting richer, and it ain't you and I, right? Most people, it's like, good. Oh, you made a couple $1 million. Great. We're not talking about you. Upper middle class. We're talking about ultra wealthy, the 1% of the 1%, right? They're the ones, that control literally 80% of the wealth in the stock market and all of that. All right, let's reset the deck. I'm going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but also I have an update on the immigration cases that are ripping through the nation. I told my wife this morning on our morning walk with the baby, I said, it feels like the dawn of a new day. It feels like the country's coming together and starting to all get on the same page that we're getting ripped off in multiple ways. The tariffs are going to, crush our economy. It's only beginning. And I'm not saying this, to be fear-based. I just think this is what's going to happen, as been evident by the stock market, the wild sort of like grinding to a halt. We had the best stock market in the world in the history of time. And now it's really slowed down because companies, they're afraid to manufacture things not knowing what it's going to cost, right? No one knows what to do. Well, the White House has tweeted this. They tweeted a New York Times article saying to Senator Chris Van Hollen, who went to El Salvador to meet with the wrongly deported man, and they actually they edited the article to say, it did say Senator meets with wrongly deported Maryland man in El Salvador. They edited it to say Senator meets with a deported MS-13 illegal alien in El Salvador who's never coming back. They say he's not coming back. And to be quite honest, I don't think this is necessarily up to the White House to decide. I think this is up to the people to decide. And I think they're behind the times. I think the White House is chronically online and thinks they have more support than they actually do. Let's go to an update where Caitlin Collins grills the border czar, Tom Homan, for evidence. You keep saying he's a terrorist. How come you never, pursued this in court? Have a listen.
The judge here, Judge Dennis, that I quoted of Maryland, said, quote, no evidence before the court connects Abrego Garcia to MS-13 or any other criminal organization. You just argued yourself that you believe there is evidence of that. Why has that not been included in this? Why has the administration not made that argument, not just publicly on television, but in court?
Damn.
Well, there is evidence. Like 2 different federal judges said he was MS-13 member, immigration court. That's a part of the file. The file's there. And I think yesterday the administration did release police reports on the subject being MS-13 member and being involved with MS-13 activity.
And by the way, they released the reports accusing him of that. But the only thing they had was that he had a Chicago Bulls jersey and hat on, and an immigration officer who was then later, like the next week, I think fired for other, issues of, giving information to a sex worker or something. It's like, were they just, were they being bonused? It's an honest question. Were they being bonused for catching people? Because this, it's almost like they were accusing people of being MS-13 with no evidence. And then the only evidence in court was that they were accused of it. So how does that, where's the burden of proof here?
And even had rank within MS-13. I think some of those reports were released yesterday.
But I don't see any of that being made in a court filing. I've been looking at the court filings. Yeah, I've heard it in the briefing room. I've heard it in television interviews, but I haven't seen any of that in court, where it obviously, not just the court of public opinion here.
What?
The judge here.
And of course, Trump will call Caitlin Collins a failed journalist, but hey, yeah, where is it in court? How come those that blindly support the administration are just throwing out the way we do business. How come they, and again, I want to leave space for people, and I think a lot of people are changing their opinions. We now know that Trump has never pulled as low as he's polling right now with regard to independence. So people that aren't blindly following him are saying, hold on a second. And I don't think those people will ever go back, because they've been made aware that the Trump administration has no problem lying to people's face. And like, do we really want to live in a world where we're just going to tweet out he's never coming back? I mean, this feels like, Taylor Swift fan clubs, right? Who are tweeting out song lyrics. It's like, that's a goddamn White House, spokesperson. Aren't they supposed to have credibility and really speak to the letter of the law? So this is a wild story, an update on the Palestinian student. I think she's from Turkey, and she was speaking out in a pro-Palestinian op-ed, which is what led to her being disappeared. Well, here's a crazy update. Have a listen to this.
Just in this morning, the Trump administration's efforts to deport a Tufts University student. An immigration judge has now denied bond to Ramesa Ozturk in her removal case, finding that Ozturk is a flight risk and a danger to the community based on a memo the State Department submitted to the court.
So let me get this right. You're trying to kick her out of the country, and you don't want to give her bond because she might fly out of the country. Okay. And by the way, all she did was write an op-ed. Op-ed stands for opinion/editorial. She had an opinion that she wanted the school to stop funding, some pro-Israeli, organization, right? That's what they wanted. I don't know the details, but it had nothing to do with Hamas. They just said, we want an end to the war. And they ended up winning that, right? The school board ended up voting on that and sided. The school sided with her opinion, and yet she is now being held and detained for weeks now. So just wild stuff. Now, in other words, a lot of people who voted for Trump said, "Hey, look, we just want an end to the wars. We want X, Y, and Z," and they thought that he was going to get an end to the Russia-Ukraine war, the war in Ukraine. Now, any rational person said this is ridiculous. Like, everyone wants an end to the war, but it is less a war and more an invasion. Russia invaded Ukraine. So how do you end this thing, right? And as it turns out, even though they promised they would, they said actually they wouldn't have this. They said they didn't say they were going to have this settled on day one. They said as soon as Trump wins, they're going to have this thing settled before he even takes office. Now we have a little bit of a different opinion on this. Here's little Marco Rubio.
I thought we had positive meetings yesterday. This is important, but there are a lot of other really important things going on that deserve just as much, if not more, attention. So if they're serious about peace, either side or both, we want to help. If it's not going to happen, then we're just going to move on.
So there it is. Secretary of State says the U.S. is ready to abandon Russia-Ukraine peace efforts. Mind you, this week we reported that Ukraine was saying, hey, we'll buy the weapons. Let us buy the weapons to defend ourselves. That's all they want to do. So to say that Ukraine doesn't want peace is ridiculous. It wants peace for its people. It wants an invading country to get out of their fucking land. Right? And here we have, and again, just wrapping it all up for you on CNBC today, Aaron Rupar reports Elizabeth Warren had to explain to the anchors that Congress can take away tariffs, right? Tariffs, this tariff conversation is absolutely sinking the economy. People are not going to be able to afford things. It's going to lead us into a depression, or at least a recession. Who the hell is going to want to buy things in travel and do all of this when the economy is in uncharted territory? And here's Senator Elizabeth Warren saying, hey, Congress could just vote these things down. Have a listen.
McConnell. We got 4 Republicans who crossed the aisle that gave us a majority.
But it ultimately doesn't matter.
What do you mean it ultimately doesn't matter? This is the law. I'm still kind of Constitution 101.
No, but he has the authority, ultimately.
Well, no, he does not. That's the whole point. He does not have the authority if Congress does not let him keep this authority. We can take this away. Yeah. He has declared an emergency. That's what gives him the authority. Otherwise, it belongs to Congress.
All right, so yeah, Congress can put an end to all of this. But again, they are Republican controlled and they don't have spines. And this isn't going to affect them because most of them are already rich. So if they're going to have a recession that lasts for 10 years, they're just going to invest and ride it out. That's what they're going to do. right? They don't care. They're not the ones plowing the farmlands where no one's buying the products and they have to burn the corn because they can't find a seller. And there's all of this, soy product that no one's going to buy because China decided to do a deal with Brazil. The senators, the Congress, they don't care. They care about getting reelected. And I'm here to remind them and everybody else, if this shit goes sideways, it already is, they're not going to get reelected anyway. So grow a pair and do the right thing. Now, speaking of doing the right thing, I wanted to end with this. This is AOC. She has been touring with Bernie Sanders. She is the de facto recipient of Bernie Sanders' audience, really. She is opening for him. She is next in line. Now, there is a betting person, I think his name's Nate Silver, and they were placing the odds of who they think is going to run for office in 2028. And they say, even though she's not polling the highest, they say AOC has the most momentum to run for office. And again, I said this the other day, I said I'll never vote for a candidate who takes money from lobbyists, from super PACs, from big corporations. I'm done. I'll never again do it. I'd rather move to another country, and I'm not gonna do it. And I'm making that stance now so people can join me, and we can have this groundswell movement where we know that the people we elect into office, whether they're Democrat or Republican, we at least know they are working for the people. Again, it's not about left versus right. It's up versus down. The people that get elected with super PAC money, with money from different governments that want certain wars and have other agendas, they're not working for us. They're giving us slivers while they work for somebody else, right? That's just plain and simple how it is. So here's AOC saying, because people have said, why are they doing rallies in states that no one's going to even vote for them? Well, we have our answer. Have a listen to this.
On the way here, we got a very interesting piece of news, which is that some of those Republican House members that we had visited, they just led a letter warning the Republican leadership, saying, we don't know if we can vote for Medicaid cuts now.
It's called democracy.
You, Missoula. That's you, Montana. That's you, Colorado. That's you, Arizona. That's you, California. That's you, the people. We got them on their back foot. We got them scared. We got them running. But our job is not done. And we will rally every corner of the United States of America until we save Medicaid and Medicare for every American, until we defend Social Security, and we tell them who's really in charge in this country. So we are here for the long haul, and we will not stop until they actually vote no. We're not going to let them trick us with gestures and strongly worded letters. I want to see the no vote on the floor. That's the only thing we will accept.
Damn. And the thing I love most is her response to people. She says, hey, look, I'm not doing this for the Democratic Party. I'm doing this for the Americans out there that are getting robbed. And, there's a lot of people that don't like what she has to say. There are, but a lot of them don't know why. And I'm going to tell you this right now, the amount of press that she's getting, I'll take that bet that she'll be the next president of the United States of America. And this fight has to happen hard. And it has to happen today and every day leading up to the next election, the midterms, and everything else. This idea that, we've got these Democrats in office. No, everybody gets challenged because there needs to be new, fresh blood that doesn't have corporate money. You need clean candidates. And these clean candidates, whether they're on the left or on the right, need to emerge. We need to go back to a world where the billionaires aren't buying our elections. And that speaks to both sides of the aisle. Corporate centrist Democrats, bought and paid for Republicans, bye-bye. You got to go. It's a new world coming. And I believe that. And I believe that this resurrection that's happening, how apropos towards seeing it happen right now on this weekend, a symbolic time. It's a symbolic weekend for this to be happening because, of course, Easter weekend. And, I'm just going to make a play to my Christian friends out there, my friends that, respect or practice other religions. We're all in this. We all share the same values. We want to protect our neighbors. We want to thrive. We all want a chance and some light at the end of the tunnel to get an education that we can afford and a roof over our heads. That's easy stuff. That's stuff we can all get behind. And finally, we have people out there speaking for that. And not just because it's a time where it's politically convenient, because it's not. She's not running for office right now. She's running to rally the people. And that I think we should all respect. All right. Everyone have a good weekend. That's going to do it for me. I'm out of here. It was a good one. Got a lot covered, a lot of new eyeballs and earballs on us. So thank you guys. If you want to continue sharing us with your fans or with your friends, family, whoever, you can go to patreon.com/Dave Neal to support us privately. A good chunk of our audience and our revenue comes from those that have private memberships. You can share us free with your friends. You can leave a nice review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. The best way is to just share a link to this video with your friend group. Maybe people are following pop culture. Maybe they don't know much about politics. Maybe it's the other way around. We'll do a little bit for everybody, and we'll continue to get the good word out there. Thank you guys all so much for another good one. We'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend. Oh, I forgot. We end every Friday telling our boss to go fuck themselves. But again, now we're switching it up a little bit. So while you're going out there, while you see these Amazon drones, shipping products over your head, let's all go tell the billionaires to go fuck themselves. We'll see you on Monday. I'm Dave Neal, and this is The Rush.